After the release of Grand Theft Auto Vice City, Rockstar Games knew they had captured lightning in a bottle with this series. Grand Theft Auto 3 was an extraordinary success, and Vice City, a project that started off as a small mission-packed spin-off that grew rapidly, outperformed GTA 3 in every metric. They made Vice City in less than a year's time, and it still turned out to be a masterpiece. However, there is no shying away from the fact that it was a rushed project, and on the surface level, it was merely a reskin of Grand Theft Auto 3 when it came to the visuals and the general mechanics of the game. On top of that, Rockstar's staff was worn down with this hectic production cycle, so all things were pointing at the next Grand Theft Auto taking things a little bit slower. It was time to nurture the development and in turn take the time necessary to actually make an innovative new entry into this franchise. They wanted to get ambitious, take chances, and make a game that will impress the hell out of people just like GTA 3 and Vice City did. The last thing they wanted was to lose this lightning in a bottle that they had. In GTA 3, they put a spotlight on the East Coast, primarily New York City, in modern day. Modern at the time of release anyway. In Vice City, they moved on to Miami in its most iconic period of the 1980s, and now it was time to tackle another cornerstone of American culture, the West Coast in the early 1990s, primarily Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Las Vegas. This is the game that everyone I knew was playing in 2004. Me and friends would all gather around the TV and pass the controller after each mission, or whenever someone died after seeing how long they could last with 6 wanted stars. This is the game that had people with folded up pieces of notebook paper shoved into the game case full of handwritten cheat codes that they found online, or better yet, in one of those cheat code books that you get from the Scholastic Book Fair at school. This is the game, like every other Rockstar game, that got news stations, politicians, and school boards all riled up at kids playing as gangsters in Compton, killing rival gangs and police officers, or somehow even more scandalous than that, having some hot coffee with a date in the game. This is Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
Put Grove Street on the map for good, for life.
Alright, nigga.
Grove Street for
Let's
life.
roll.
San Andreas takes place in a fictionalized rendition of Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Las Vegas in 1992. We take control of the protagonist Carl Johnson, also known as CJ. CJ is called back home from Liberty City by his brother, Sean Sweet Johnson, after their mother is murdered in a drive-by shooting. CJ arrives back to Los Santos to his old neighborhood and gang called Grove Street. He's been gone for 5 years, and being back, he sees how much power Grove Street has lost to its rival gangs, corrupt police, and drugs wreaking havoc on the people there. CJ originally shows back up to mourn his mother, but he quickly reunites and forms camaraderie with his family and former friends, mainly his brother Sweet, his sister Kendall, and close friends Big Smoke and Ryder. Grove Street is on their last legs. I mean, they can't even attend their mom's funeral without the rival gang, the Ballas, trying to kill them. Seeing all this, CJ decides to stay and help the gang rise back in power. The game starts small enough, with CJ getting his gang's name back out there, spraying tags in Ballas turf, doing drive-bys, and getting rid of the crack dealers in the neighborhood. Eventually killing key members of the Ballas gang and then attacking them at their own funeral just like they did to them, igniting a full-blown gang war in the city. It all comes crashing down when a big gang fight breaks out and Sweet is injured and both he and CJ get arrested. Sweet gets sent to prison and CJ is forced to start doing jobs under the corrupt police officers that arrested him, mainly Officer Tenpenny and his crash unit. From here, the game expands into bigger things than simple gang wars.
He gets into the mix with other more organized crime gangs like the Triads and the Italian Mafia.
And he gets into bigger business ventures like managing rap artists, starting an auto shop, starting a casino on the Las Vegas Strip, and working for an undercover agent of an undisclosed federal organization. But things are still going on back in the neighborhood, and once Sweet is out of jail, CJ is reminded of why he stayed in San Andreas to begin with, to get rid of the problems in Grove Street and to get them back to power. The plot of this game, like everything else, is way more in depth than the prior GTA titles, and I'm excited to get into the full story a little later in this video, including the prequel movie called The Introduction that gives even more backstory to the game's plots not shown in the game itself. But we'll get to that in just a moment. Let's get into some history first. San Andreas was meant to be the biggest and most innovative GTA game yet, and Rockstar Games wanted to double the production time of Vice City in order to achieve that. That's impressive to say out loud, but it's less impressive when you remember that Vice City was made in a year. So doubling that is still only 2 years of production. But as San Andreas proves, 2 years is plenty for Rockstar North. But that's not without struggles of the team. Production on San Andreas started the same month that Vice City was released, so there wasn't much of a break for the staff at Rockstar North. And with this new game aiming to be bigger, better, and badder, developers were working long, grueling days, up to 17 hours a day per some accounts, resulting in several staff members stepping away from Rockstar due to the president Sam Houser not budging on development schedules. During this time, Rockstar also had 2 other games in production, one being Manhunt that was released mid-production of San Andreas in 2003, and the other being The Warriors that was postponed until 2005 to put more hands onto San Andreas. They not only doubled the time of production, but they also doubled the budget of the game as well. Vice City cost $5 million to make, and San Andreas was allotted a generous $10 million to work with. While Vice City did have some improvements technically over Grand Theft Auto 3, it wasn't just a reskin like a lot of people reduce it to. The improvements that they made were relatively minor in nature, and that doesn't apply so much when talking about San Andreas. The improvements here were insane.
You a maniac, S.A.?
For starters, the map was 6 times larger than GTA 3 and Vice City. They originally planned to have 3 separate maps that focused around 3 different cities that were going to be able to be traveled to with public transit. But eventually, they decided they were just going to make one giant map that had all 3 cities within it, with each city being about as large as Vice City's entire map, and then add even more rural areas in between them as well to add more to explore and to do outside of the urban cities. The 3 cities, like the other Grand Theft Auto games, are inspired by real-life counterparts, of course. Los Santos is Los Angeles, San Fierro is San Francisco, and Las Venturas is Las Vegas. This in itself was unreal because the game is coming out on the same console as the prior 2 games, and this game had 0 loading screens. Vice City had loading screens when going between the islands on its map, and this game, being about 6 times larger, had no loading screens. The entire world is built around a set amount of unique objects, 16,000 of them to be exact, and as the player traversed the world, things would be rendered in fully once you were in sight of them, and bigger things that you can see from further away, like mountains and tall buildings, were rendered using a lower detailed model, allowing them to be there but not use a ton of memory on making it look high definition. I am by no means an expert on video game development. Hell, I'm not even a novice. I know nothing. I just like to play video games. But I know that San Andreas was a miracle to have on one disc on the PlayStation 2 in 2004. It was unreal. There is also a ton of minor technical details that this game did that made everything so crisp that a 12-year-old me was never going to notice when this game came out. Hell, I barely notice them now, but technical gurus like YouTuber TJGM do. The game had different vertex coloring to models in the game depending on whether it was day or night, allowing for things to look like it was really nighttime and not just have the brightness turned down. The environment was incredibly dense with things like grass, wheat in the country, and cactus in the desert, and having them be actual 3D objects and not just textures like they were in previous games. Shadows were entirely revamped, stencil shadows were added to things like cars and buildings, and dynamic shadows were given to character models. The weather was different for each region. The developers wanted each region to feel unique but also related, so skyboxes were shaded orange in Los Santos, purple in Las Venturas, and blue in San Fierro. The radio system was also revamped with songs not just playing from beginning to end, but each song had several unique intros and outros from the DJ, so the same song could be introduced in a multitude of ways while you're driving around. And the DJs also commented on current events happening in the game between the songs, as well as the current weather going on in the city, and it feels like you're listening to a real radio host in the real world. Pedestrian spawning was also redone, with spawn densities changing depending on location, weather, and time of day, and even which day of the week it was, with more people at places like the beach on the weekends and less people in the business district, and vice versa. And on that note, there was a day of the week system. I had no idea, but it's been there the whole time. There are countless other minute technical details that Rockstar painstakingly added to this game to make it pop, and in a way you notice them as a whole. This game feels more visceral and alive, but I'd be lying if I said I knew each and every reason of why it felt that way. So shout out to the people that do, like TJGM. I'll link his video below if you're interested in seeing more of the technical side of San Andreas. Not every change is small though, some are just as large and impactful as the map sizing. There were entirely new mechanics added to the game. Swimming was added to the game, finally, and it was purely out of spite. Dan Houser said, "We got tired and pissed off with people saying that we can't do swimming in Vice City." I was totally one of those people, and they added it to the game. It is featured in a couple missions in the game, but it's mainly so you can jump in and explore the ocean to your heart's desire. Or if you're accidentally speeding in your tuner car and hit the NOS when there's no guardrail coming up and you just go into the water, you can get out of your car without drowning. The game's combat system was also revamped, taking notes from Manhunt with the camera and targeting controls, as well as the health indicators on the crosshairs showing you the health of the poor sap that you're shooting or beating up. Also from Manhunt, they added stealth to the game, using shadows and crouch walking to sneak up on and execute enemies. Not nearly as graphic as Manhunt in that sense, but it's still there. And like swimming, it's used in a handful of missions. The whole mechanic was coded into the game just to show it off once or twice. Another small detail but a giant improvement to the gameplay was being able to climb over fences or pull yourself up onto walls, something that you didn't know you were missing from prior games, but in an open world exploration game it just makes sense. Tons of vehicles were added with unique driving styles and controls all their own. Bicycles with a pedaling system like running, going as fast or as slow as you want to, but also being able to wheelie on them or bunny hop. Big rig trucks with detachable trailers. Operational tow trucks, combine harvesters that spat out not only the crops that you were running over, but also the guts of the people that you were running over. Four-wheelers, trains, fighter jets, jetpacks, and let's not forget even more RC vehicles that everyone loves so much. They actually aren't that bad in this game at all, unlike the nightmares that they caused in Vice City. Character customization was another massive change for this game. In Vice City, you could change your outfits in the game, but there weren't many to choose from. In San Andreas, you get to create a whole outfit from the ground up. You choose the pants, the shirt, the shoes, the hat, the chain, the watch, with each city and each neighborhood within those cities having different clothing stores selling a wide range of clothing in all different styles and costs. Changing CJ's clothes depending on which part of the story I'm at in the game was one of my favorite things to do. New city, new threads. Same goes for the type of cars that I drove around. The customization isn't just surface level with clothes either. You can get different haircuts and tattoos as well, offering deeper personalization. And even deeper from there, this is the first and only Grand Theft Auto game where you can alter your player model depending on what kind of activity you do. Eat a ton of fast food and drive everywhere, you get Fat CJ. Hit the gym and eat healthier food, you get Jacked CJ. Eat nothing and run all the time, you get Skinny CJ. And it's not just appearance either. Fat CJ will get gassed more often when trying to sprint, and vaulting over things is a lot slower. And Muscular CJ hits a lot harder with his punches and can learn different fighting styles in the gym if he is fit enough. All these customizations also affect how NPCs talk to you. Wear nicer clothes and people will compliment you on the street depending on where you are. And same goes for ragged clothes and insults.
Finally, a man who dresses like one.
Same also goes for physical appearance. NPCs will be sure to tell you if you've eaten too many burgers.
Come back here when you've lost some weight, Fatso. I'll be waiting.
This game also introduces skills to the game which affect how CJ does certain actions like stamina, lung capacity, and sex appeal, with things like shooting and driving getting better as you do them and resulting in better control of each respective action, even changing how CJ holds each weapon depending on his skill level. This is also the first game to introduce car customization as well. No longer are you backing in and out of paint sprays until your car is the color that you want it to be. You can now choose the color of your car and then some. You can modify the wheels, the bumpers, spoilers, and certain vehicles can be taken to specialty shops for even more customizing, like lowriders with exhausts and hydraulics and tuner cars with body kits and nitrous oxide. I loved this aspect of the game then and now. I'm a car guy, but I don't really like racing games too much. Need for Speed Most Wanted is one of my favorite games ever, just based off the way that you can design your car. So a game where I can customize cars and I'm not forced to race to unlock items is fantastic. And even replaying this game for the video, I spent way too many hours specking out my garage picks. Not surprisingly, there is also several new mini games that you can partake in that were added into San Andreas. You got gambling in several different varieties, lowrider challenges, basketball, pool, arcade games, dating several different girls in all areas of the map, triathlons, BMX challenges, gangland takeovers, including recruiting gangsters to ride along with you and battle rival gangs for control of certain locations. And new side jobs were added too, on top of the usual vigilante, medic, and taxi options. You have freight train driving, pimping missions, home invasions, valet parking, and big rig trucking, quarry missions, and several different vehicle schools, like driving, both cars and motorcycles, flying, or boating. There are probably other things that I'm missing here as well. It is insane the level of things that they shoved into this game. But just know, there is a metric fuck ton of things to do. There was even an option to do local co-op multiplayer on the PlayStation 2. It was a super cool concept, but in reality it was pretty limited. You couldn't do missions or anything together, so you were essentially stuck doing free roam around the city or rampages. But both players had to stay in close proximity to each other, so even exploration was kind of limited. It was a neat idea, but me and friends always just passed the controller when playing together. The co-op just wasn't really that fun in my opinion. You could force a kiss upon whoever you were playing with though, which was always funny no matter which character you were playing as. This large, expansive world is also the reason that this game was riddled with urban legends and myths surrounding the world. From abandoned cars in the countryside, to ghost towns and bodies and holes dug in the desert, to more prolific things like the murderer Pigsy from Manhunt being on the prowl, Bigfoot roaming the woods, and CJ's mom's ghost roaming the halls of their home in Grove Street. The vast majority of these sightings of ghosts and mythical creatures and killers are all false, but in 2004 they felt real. We all knew the legend of Bigfoot in the game, and we spent many an hour roaming the woods at night around Mount Chiliad hoping to see him. But realistically, the game just had this eerie, creepy atmosphere to it whenever you were outside of the city. The countryside was just pretty chilling, to be honest. Like Vice City, stuff wasn't just tossed into the game for the hell of it. There was a lot of serious thought and deliberation of the vibe of the game, and what influences to draw from when not only building the world, but writing the narrative and designing the characters. Rockstar did on-site research into each major location of the game's real-life counterparts, namely the big three cities, with landmarks and iconic sites being represented in the game as well. The Hollywood sign, the Santa Monica Pier, Randy's Donuts, the Golden State Bridge, San Francisco's Hills, the Vegas Strip, hell, even Area 51 and countless more things are shoehorned into this world that just makes it feel incredibly dense with things to do and explore, but also gave the game that typical Rockstar charm of parody. The biggest focus of the game was on the Los Angeles region, namely the gang crime areas like Compton, Inglewood, Watts, and Echo Park. Rockstar consulted with some prominent members of LA culture to get an accurate representation of LA from people who lived there in the 90s. DJ Pooh was their go-to source for LA culture as the producer for some of the biggest sounds in hip-hop from the 90s West Coast scene, like Ice Cube's It Was a Good Day. He was such an influence on the game that he became a co-writer and producer for San Andreas, and he was even connected with Rockstar again when they went back to Los Santos for GTA 5, where he was a creative consultant and DJ on the West Coast Classics radio in that game. But Rockstar also linked up with Estevan Oriol, a photographer who's known for documenting Cholo culture in Los Angeles, as well as Mr. Cartoon, one of LA's most influential tattoo artists. Rockstar relied on these sources and several others to bring an authentic feel to what they were trying to portray in this game. Remember, Rockstar North is based in Scotland, so LA in the 90s is not necessarily in their wheelhouse. When they went to California on these scouting expeditions, some of the crew got risky and went even deeper into the gang culture of LA as well, doing ride-alongs and hanging out with real OG gangsters who were in that lifestyle in the 90s. It's no surprise that the hood got the most attention from developers either. Sam Houser has admitted to being fascinated with American gang culture on the West Coast, and he wanted to accurately portray it without glorifying it too much. Movies like Boys in the Hood, Colors, New Jack City, and Menace to Society all played a heavy role in inspiring the tone of the world and the characters, as well as inspiring story beats in the game. Menace to Society especially. The green saber in the game is ripped straight from the final scene of the movie. Both actors that play Ryder and Big Smoke are in that movie, and several gang members in the game are based on appearances of people in the film. Other movies are used to fill in the general vibe of the rest of the map as well. That wasn't Gangland Los Angeles, like Bullet for San Fierro, Casino for Las Venturas, and Deliverance for the countryside. It's not only the vibe of the game that was carefully crafted to be authentic, but Rockstar also infused a bunch of real-life world events that happened in 90s Los Angeles into the narrative of the game. Most obviously is the gang wars between the Ballas and Grove Street, being representative of the big gang conflicts of the Bloods and the Crips, especially the characteristic single color identifiers taking over the gangs. Just instead of blues and reds, it's purple and greens. The crack epidemic of the late 80s and early 90s is also shown as the plague it was to low-income areas. It is a large part of the reason that Grove Street lost so much power, with prominent members of the gang like Big Bear being reduced to a crack fiend, doing house chores for his next fix, and his dealer B-Dup leaving the gang as well because he's making enough money just dealing crack. The 1992 LA riots that were caused by the acquittal of police officers that were accused of beating Rodney King during an arrest was reflected in Los Santos as well, with riots breaking out in the city after corrupt Officer Tenpenny had several charges against him dropped after his very public arrest of numerous crimes against the people of Los Santos. And on that note, Tenpenny and his crash units are also directly based on the Rampart scandal in the late 90s and early 2000s, where the real LAPD crash units, or community resources against street hoodlums, was found to be widespread with criminal activity and corruption, like unprovoked shootings and beatings, planting false evidence, dealing narcotics, and plenty more. Much like all the things that Tenpenny and his boys did in the game. All this may be shocking to non-US viewers who see Tenpenny and think that corrupt cops like that are fictional villains made only for games and movies, but nope. Officer Tenpenny is essentially just the video game version of Officer Rafael Perez. Coming from Vice City, the idea of working with big stars for the cast was kind of soured after the experience with Burt Reynolds and Ray Liotta being divas on set. So the idea for the main character was for it to be someone relatively unknown, to make the protagonist feel human and relatable, rather than listening to Liotta as Tommy Vercetti and hearing the actor more than the character. The choice for the voice of CJ was a rapper named Young Melee, who was recommended by DJ Pooh to Rockstar to be involved with the game. He was known in inner circles in the LA hip-hop community, but he definitely wasn't a major name that most people knew. At this point, he hadn't even released an album or a mixtape yet, so the voice wasn't going to be recognized. In fact, it's the complete opposite these days. Young Melee's rap career never escaped comments on YouTube that reference San Andreas or CJ in some way, and really, it's hard to just not hear CJ when you grew up with that character.
Oh shit.
Yeah, so
Here we go again.
Also, another fun fact about Young Melee is that he's real-life cousins with Sean Fontino, the voice actor of Franklin in GTA 5, who also had minor voice acting credits as unnamed gangsters in San Andreas. Rockstar tried to cast a lot of LA icons in the game, no matter how large or small the name. Some 90s hip-hop stars like MC8 as Ryder, Yo-Yo as Kendall Johnson, and Ice-T as Mad Dog. And current LA rapper The Game also played a minor role as Beat-Up, the crack dealer. They also got quite a few smaller actors to voice characters too, like Faison Love as Sweet Johnson. He was also Big Worm in Friday.
I don't think you applying yourself, Smokey.
Clifton Powell as Big Smoke, who was also Pinky in Next Friday.
I
Oh, shit! Say it again! Say something else! Oh! Say something else!
Charlie Murphy as Jizzy B. He's Charlie Murphy. Chris Penn as Officer Pulaski. He's Nice Guy Eddie from Reservoir Dogs. And David Cross as Zero from tons of stuff. But Dwight from Scary Movie 2 is definitely a standout. These aren't like no-name actors, they are definitely respectable, but they aren't as monumental as like Ray Liotta or Burt Reynolds. A much different cast list than Vice City, which was loaded with well-known names. San Andreas was just much more low-key. In fact, the only big-name actors that were in San Andreas were Samuel L. Jackson as Officer Tenpenny, which is one of the best casting choices from Rockstar across their whole catalog.
We can shit on you from such a height, you'll think God himself has crapped on you. You understand?
And James Woods as Mike Torino, who was also a standout in this game.
Did you hear that?
They're a bunch of bullshit. Ignore them. They shoot at you. It's an international incident. You're not a British tank. You should be fine.
For real?
Yeah, well, probably.
There are some other bigger names like William Fichtner and Frank Vincent, but they were reprising their roles from prior games as Ken Rosenberg and Salvatore Leone, respectively. And there are a dozen or so names that are well known in certain niches, but I'm not going to take the time to go over every voice actor and their filmography here. So here is permission to comment, but what about so-and-so who voiced this guy? How can you not mention him? For the music in the game, Rockstar partnered with Interscope Records to create the iconic radio station soundtrack that they've become known for with the last two games. In San Andreas, there are 11 different radio stations with 20 different DJs across them, with several iconic voices gracing the mic, like Axl Rose, Chuck D, and George Clinton. They put in 3 times the tracks as the last two games, and even more in-universe commercials to play on the air, another thing that they've become known for over the years. Vice City had one of the best soundtracks in the whole series, but honestly San Andreas has to take the crown for me. They have even more variety of genres, and the music feels even more appropriate than 80s Miami did, with the likes of Tupac, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, Cypress Hill, and several more for hip-hop in the city, Willie Nelson, Hank Williams, Loretta Lynn, and Eddie Rabbitt for the country station, a handful of rock stations featuring Kiss, Leonard Skinner, Guns N' Roses, Ozzy Osbourne, and Rage Against the Machine. They had R&B stations, reggae, house music, and even a dedicated station just for talk radio, with several different talking segments fully voice acted and in-depth, like The Tight End Zone, a sports broadcast that just barely talks about sports. The radio in this game is just next level. Every single station is fully dynamic. Even in future games, they mix in loops of audio mixed with dynamic broadcasts. They even went as far as to make the radio sound different depending on which car you're in. Like if you're in a closed interior, the radio sounds better, while driving a convertible or a motorcycle changes the audio quality. And when customizing cars, you can boost the car's stereo system, making the bass boom even harder. There are 155 different songs in this game, and damn near everyone is catchy, having you sing along while you cruise down the streets of Los Santos. And even CJ can't help but sing along to the songs after he hears them as well.
Move your body, move your body.
With all that being said, let's get into the meat of this game. Really dive into the story and see what San Andreas had to offer to the franchise as far as storytelling goes. Spoilers for the entire game ahead, so if you haven't played the game for whatever reason, or just aren't interested in a story recap, maybe just skip this section of the video. In October of 2005, Rockstar released a special edition of the game on the PlayStation 2, which included a documentary film about a lowrider club in Compton, the game's soundtrack, and also included a 21-minute long in-game movie called The Introduction, which gives background to the game's plot. It goes over a ton of scenes with many characters leading up to the beginning moments of the game. I will reference some scenes from the movie as I go over the plot, as some of it is only worth knowing once you know what they are referencing. What the movie does touch on is what protagonist CJ is up to prior to the events of the game. CJ was a member of the Grove Street family gang in Los Santos. In 1987, CJ's brother Brian died from unknown reasons, but it's clear that his death brought some tension to Grove Street, and CJ's other brother Sweet seemingly blaming CJ for Brian's death. So CJ decides to leave and go live in Liberty City to use his talents of crime there, mainly robbery and carjacking under Joey Leone. Sweet is seen hanging out with other members of Grove Street during this time. CJ's gone and he says that he lost 2 brothers that day. Brian died and CJ went to run around on the East Coast like a fool, plainly stating that he and CJ are not speaking.
CJ running around like a fool on the East Coast. He can run here for all I give a fuck.
In between scenes of various characters in the movie, there are shots of a green car called a Sabre cruising around the streets of Los Santos, until it finally creeps down Grove Street and Ballas from inside the car opens fire in a drive-by shooting of the Johnson house before speeding away. Sweet and Kendall both rush into the house, with Sweet getting in first and finding his mother dead from the shooting, and stopping Kendall from going inside and witnessing that. As sirens approach and Kendall is crying on the front porch, Sweet calls his brother CJ for the first time in years and tells him the news, saying he thinks CJ should come home, giving us the opening lines that we hear in the game as CJ bows his head.
CJ, it's your brother.
Okay, what you want?
I think you better come home. It's about Mama. She's dead, bro.
So CJ flies into San Andreas, and once he's off the plane, he gets pulled over on the cab ride home by officers Tenpenny, Pulaski, and Hernandez. They knew Carl was coming in due to the death of his mom, and they immediately start working their corruption on him, taking his cash and saying they found a gun on him, which was just used to kill a police officer 10 minutes prior to his arrest. That dead police officer is an Officer Pendlebury, shown in the movie The Introduction to be gunned down by Officer Hernandez under Tenpenny's order because he was going to internal affairs with the crash unit's business. But Tenpenny has no intention of bringing CJ in for this crime. They are simply strong-arming him and showing him that they are the ones that run the city, and showing us, the player, that they are some corrupt sons of bitches. But most importantly, blackmailing CJ in order to use him later on. They eventually toss CJ out of the car in the middle of Ballas turf to make him pedal home on a bicycle.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Once back in Grove Street, CJ goes into his family home and gets flashbacks of growing up there, getting overwhelmed with memories before friend of the family Big Smoke comes out of the kitchen with a baseball bat ready to smack the intruder.
You picked the wrong house, fool! Hey, Big Smoke! It's me, Carl! Chill!
From here, CJ and Big Smoke head to the graveyard to meet with Sweet, Kendall, and Ryder. Kendall is happy to see her brother, but Sweet immediately starts arguing with CJ. But as they leave, they are shot at by a passing Ballas car, and they have to make their way back home to the Grove Street on bikes. CJ is realizing just how much Grove Street has fallen since he left. Other families from the Grove Street set have left the gang and formed their own thing. The Seville Boulevard gang and Temple Drive gang are no longer part of the Grove Street family. And with this loss in power, the Ballas and the Vagos have been able to move more and more into their turf and sell drugs and run the streets. I mean, Ryder can't even stick up the local pizza joint without being out-muscled by the minimum wage staff there. Grove Street is becoming a joke. Seeing the state of the gang and wanting to get back at who killed his mother, CJ decides to stick around and help the family. And even if he wanted to leave, Tenpenny and his goons have instructed Carl not to leave. It starts off small time, easing CJ back into the street life of Los Santos. He covers up Ballas tags in a few different neighborhoods, beats up some crack dealers, buys some guns from an arms dealer, and even gets into a few small shootouts with some Ballas when trying to get some food. CJ and the crew also go on the offensive a bit with their new guns and roll through Ballas territory doing drive-bys, and CJ ends up getting into a shootout with a former Grove Street set on Seville Boulevard, after Sweet gets ambushed when picking up his girl in that neighborhood. Things also start to heat up a little bit. Ryder brings CJ in on his new ventures of robbery and home invasions. They rob some prepper dude with tons of guns stashed in his house. They loot a train that presumably has ammunitions or explosives of some kind on board, and even taking down a National Guard depot for crates of assault rifles. Big Smoke also has some work for CJ. They ride to Vago's hood and beat up a couple gangsters there. They also go to a train station to break up some kind of deal between the Vagos and the Riffa's gang in San Fierro, and they end up with one of the most notorious missions of having CJ just simply follow a train.
All we had to do was follow the damn train, CJ.
And they even get into a squabble with the Russian mafia. Big Smoke was in some deep shit at this point, and also it seems like every time you showed up at his door, Tenpenny was there paying him a visit.
Who?
Asshole.
And it's not just the main crew that you do work with though. You also follow Kendall to meet up with her boyfriend Caesar, the leader of the gang called the Varios Los Aztecas, You gain some respect with him by winning a lowrider competition, and even though CJ is hostile to him when they meet, Caesar keeps the peace because he loves Kendall. Caesar becomes one of CJ's most loyal allies throughout the game, but for now, he just meets up with him when there's a race in town. Because Caesar just likes racing cars, honestly. Another character that you work with is a guy named Jeffrey.
Hey, man, it's OG Loke, homie. OG Loke.
He's just getting out of jail and he decides that he wants to be a gangster rapper named OG Loke. You start helping him by killing a prisoner that he was locked up with named Freddy, who presumably did some sexual stuff with OG Loke when they were locked up. But CJ also does a lot to help OG Loke with his rap career. He steals a sound van from a beach party so OG Loke can throw his own party in Grove Street. He sneaks into famous rapper Mad Dog's mansion to steal his rhyme book to give to OG Loke for some better material to make hits, and kidnap and kill Mad Dog's manager because he was blocking OG Loke from making it in the hip hop industry. And with all this material and free reign, OG Loke throws his party on Grove Street and CJ protects it from the Ballas trying to attack. All this good work being done for the gang is halted for a while when Officer Tenpenny starts reaching out to CJ and making him do some tasks for them.
Tanny.
Don't try to hit me up with that ghetto babble, boy.
Officer Tenpenny, how you get my number?
Ways and means, you piece of shit.
They ask CJ to kill some Vagos gang member by burning down his building with him inside, and this also means that other people are inside too, like a girl named Denise, who Carl saves from the burning building that he caused, and in turn she turns into a girlfriend that CJ can bring on dates. They also get CJ to break up an arms deal between the Ballas and the Russian mafia by killing the arms dealer there. All of CJ's action in Los Santos is really starting to amp up the Ballas, as Grove Street is back on the rise with all this movement, and the Ballas' business is being affected. And seeing this, Sweet decides he needs to lay into the Ballas even harder. He gets CJ to ride to Glen Park, one of the main neighborhoods of Ballas territory, and kill a former Grove Street member named Little Weasel that switches sides over to the Ballas. CJ does this solo to earn his stripes, as Sweet says, and prove himself to the Grove Street family once and for all. They double down even further after this takeover by ambushing Little Weasel's funeral and killing the leader of the Front Yard Ballas, a guy named Kane, creating a strong sense of camaraderie in Grove Street, but also igniting a full-blown gang war. Sweet decides it's time to reunite the families of Grove Street, to strengthen their numbers even more and take down the Ballas once and for all. But during this meetup, LSPD SWAT raids the motel building and CJ and his crew have to fight their way out of the building and back to Grove Street, nearly being taken out by helicopters and almost sending themselves flying off in their car onto the freeway.
Shit, that's gonna be a hell of a story to tell when we pass in the blunt.
The interruption from the cops wasn't enough to stop the families from reuniting, and with plenty of guns to spare, it's time to take them all to the Ballas. On the way to the gang war, CJ gets called by Caesar, and he tells him that he has something he has to see in person, and he can't tell him over the phone. So he takes a 5-minute detour to see what he has to show him. Caesar and CJ sit in a car outside a garage and scope out the spot. And soon you see some Ballas coming out of some doors in the garage, and CJ doesn't really care too much. But right behind these Ballers are none other than Ryder and Big Smoke, two of Grove Street's most respected members, and family to CJ. And that's not all. Once the garage is open, the car inside is the infamous green Sabre that was used in the drive-by to kill CJ's mom. And even more, Officer Tenpenny and Pulaski walk out as well. Some big time corruption is happening here, and only Grove Street is suffering under the collaboration. And with this information, CJ remembers where he was headed with to begin with, or where likely Sweet already is. And seeing that the Ballas and Tenpenny are working together, and Ryder and Big Smoke have snitched on what Grove Street is doing, CJ realizes that Sweet is walking into an ambush, and he rushes over to try to save his brother. He gets there a little too late, with Sweet being shot and Ballas outnumbering the Grove Street families by quite a lot. But luckily, CJ has that dog in him.
Yo, Ballas, I'm taking you motherfuckers. You hear me? I'm taking you all down, bitches.
Killing the Ballas was just enough to stop them from killing Sweet and himself. But once the police show up, both CJ and his brother get arrested. Better than getting murdered in a parking lot, I guess. Sweet gets taken to a prison hospital, but CJ gets kidnapped by the crash unit and taken out to the country, a small town called Angel Pine in Whetstone County.
The middle of fucking nowhere. Nice, clean air.
getting blackmailed even further into doing their bidding and being told not to go back to Los Santos and do not try to kill Big Smoke either.
Street loyalty? That's all bullshit, Carl. Didn't you learn that when they ran you out of town just because you let Brian die? Huh? Eddie, I can't deal with this guy. He's an idiot.
Let me air this fucker out.
No, officer. For once, let's let the kid do something good with his useless life. He's gonna help us with the fight against crime. Right, Carl?
Yeah, by any means necessary.
Now you stay the fuck away from Smoke and stay the fuck away from us. Otherwise, Sweet's gonna find himself on a baller's block getting in touch with his feminine side.
Being stuck in the country with his hands tied behind his back, CJ is forced to comply with Tenpenny's blackmail for the safety of his brother and himself. The first thing he has to do is take out an informant that is going to snitch on Tenpenny and his crash unit to the FBI. He's being guarded up in the mountains under witness protection, and CJ has to get up there and kill him and also photograph his body to give proof to Tenpenny that he is dead. It's no surprise though that CJ's not going to lay down and take it from Tenpenny. He gets a call from Caesar who tells him that he and Kendall are safe and also that he has a cousin that lives up in the country there, a couple towns over. He tells CJ to meet up with them and start making some moves. CJ also gets a call from Sweet, who's laid up in the prison infirmary, and the state of things does not sound good at all. So CJ is motivated to get him out of there as soon as possible. CJ goes to a bar up in Red County to meet Caesar's cousin, and it's immediate chaos once he walks in. And the way CJ yells, "Holy shit," will never not make me laugh.
You big I sing fucking units with
This crazy woman is Catalina, the cousin that Caesar was referring to on the phone, and CJ is not too pleased with her.
Oh my goodness, thanks, Caesar.
Fans of the series may recognize Catalina as the main antagonist from Grand Theft Auto 3, Claude's girlfriend that shoots him and leaves him for dead at the beginning of the game, and later joining the Colombian cartel. Catalina has a plan for 4 heists in different cities to make a ton of cash. She lists them all out to CJ and you get to choose which ones to do in whatever order you want. The first job they do is stealing a whole tanker truck of gasoline in Dillmore. Catalina originally tried to rob the gas station, but they were protected by Max Payne. So she instead runs around the back and has CJ steal the whole fuel truck. So they hijack the truck and bring it over to a storage yard where someone happily buys the stolen fuel. Soon after this, CJ gets a call from a man named The Truth, who is a mutual contact with Tenpenny, and in turn has a job for him. A job that CJ has to do now since Tenpenny still has his balls in a vice. CJ meets with Truth and Tenpenny in a motel room, and Tenpenny needs Carl to help the Truth in providing him with a lot of weed so that he can use it to frame someone that needs to be taken out. So CJ's not very pleased here because he's being used as a soldier for yet another person that he doesn't know, and also Tenpenny is making him buy all this weed that needs to be grown to use in his own corruption plot. So CJ's out his free will and also a lot of money.
Namaste, Carl.
The fuck that mean? Later, freak.
The first thing CJ has to do is steal a combine harvester from some farm in the hills and bring it back to the Truth's farm so that he can harvest his crops faster. Once CJ delivers the harvester, he gets a call from Caesar. The Ballas, along with Crash and Big Smoke and Ryder, have cornered the market in Los Santos. Taking out Sweet and CJ means that Grove Street is back to being without any power, letting the Ballas run the city without competition. Caesar's gang is also disbanded, being bought out by the Ballas with a price being put on not only his head, but also Kendall's. So CJ tells him and Kendall to both get out to Angel Pine and lay low with him in the country.
No, just get my sister out of town someplace safe. Don't shit with me on this one. I can't lose her, man.
Sure thing, Holmes.
CJ meets up with them once they get there, and Caesar is pissed, obviously. He wants to head back to Los Santos and start killing everyone, but CJ and Kendall convince him to lay low. Here, CJ also shows a little loyalty still for Big Smoke. He knows that he set him and his brother up, but he refuses to believe that Big Smoke is dealing crack. But Caesar knows for sure that he is, since he bought a new house and he's collaborating with all these big gangs in San Andreas. It's not long after meeting with Caesar and his sister that he gets an angry call from Catalina to get back to work with her. It's clear that this relationship with CJ and Catalina has turned into something romantic, possibly against CJ's will. But who knows, maybe he's into the violence of a beautiful Latina.
Yeah, and I'll take you to rob banks and shit.
Oh?
And, you know, I'll let you kill anyone you want to kill.
Mm-hmm.
I'ma treat you right, baby. Shit, Just, come on, just please don't shoot
Carl!
me.
I think I love you.
Shit, that's great. Cool. Yeah, fantastic. Shit, all that, you wanna go rob some shit, baby?
First job I did was robbing a bank in Palomino Creek. It's a simple enough job, but you have to kill a few country cops on your escape back to Catalina's cabin. The next day you meet up for a job in Blueberry of robbing a liquor store. And it starts off as usual with Catalina being a crazy broad at her cabin.
Oh my God! What in hell's name is that? Ow! Hey! Ooh! Ah!
How was it?
Different.
I knew you would like it.
Showing up to the liquor store though, it's already robbed by some hillbillies before you get there. So you chase down the robbers and take the cash back for yourselves. And for whatever reason, Catalina is pissed at CJ by the time they get back.
Carl, you have much to learn about the female heart. Come and see me again when you think you understand it. Goodbye.
And the next day before the next job, it's not much better. So they head to a track betting shop in Montgomery for their last job, as strictly business partners. It's a simple enough job. CJ blows the safes open with C4 that Catalina for some reason has, and they make a break for it. And back at the cabin, it's still strictly business. CJ gets his cut and the two part ways. I feel like in the span of 3 days, they went through like a 5-year relationship. Caesar gives CJ a call and he's been snooping around trying to make some money as well out in the sticks. And he found out about some racing that's going on. And he gets CJ to show up and make some bank just like he did with the lowrider races in Los Santos. At the race, CJ and Caesar meet with the organizer, a guy named Woozy Moo, and join in for the race. There is also a familiar face in the background of this cutscene, none other than Claude, the protagonist from GTA 3. CJ of course wins the race and Woozy is impressed with his skill, not only giving him his cash winnings but also a business card and instructions to reach out to him if he ever finds himself in San Fierro. The next race, CJ runs into crazy Catalina once again, who still has plenty of hostility to CJ for breaking her heart for whatever reason, breaking the headlights on CJ's car. But she moves on fast. Turns out she's already dating Claude that we briefly saw last mission. She then challenges CJ to a race after trying to make him jealous by hugging up on Claude in front of him. And meanwhile, Claude looks terrified, and rightly so. CJ wins the race, and instead of cash, Catalina gives him the deed to a garage in San Fierro, as Claude can't lose his car because they are headed to Liberty City, and we all know what happens there.
Sorry, babe. I'm an ambitious girl. You're just small time.
So for now, it's goodbye to Catalina, but for some reason, I feel like it's not the last time that we will hear from her. Later on, CJ gets a call from Truth. The weed for Tenpenny is ready, and just in time, as CJ is finished up with all these robberies and races in order to pay for it. He meets up with the Truth on his farm and gives him the cash in exchange for a van lovingly called the Mothership, with 3 tons of weed shoved into it, just before they hear helicopters approaching the farm.
Damn, man, there must be 2 tons of that stuff back there.
3 Rama. What the fuck's that noise?
Hey, that sound like a chopper.
Oh, man, narcs.
Truth and CJ run around the farm and burn the weed plants that are left there before the cops arrive on the ground. And then Truth tells CJ he just so happens to have an RPG in the van that he's been saving for a rainy day. So he uses that to take out the chopper and drive the van away. CJ decides to head to San Fierro since his cover is blown in the countryside. He calls Caesar and Kendall and tells them to meet him at a garage that he won in the races, and he drives the Mothership with Truth there as well. Arriving at the garage, it's time for CJ to start making some big moves and make strong alliances in order to get Sweets out of jail and to get power back to Grove Street. But they're even further from Los Santos than they were before, so it's going to take a lot of work, especially since the garage that he just won is a massive piece of shit.
Motherfucker! That mute asshole!
San Fierro starts off rough. CJ is stressed because he doesn't know what to do with the rundown place, but Caesar, Kendall, and Truth all get his back and offer to help out. Truth gives CJ the names of some mechanics in the area that he can recruit into the garage to get a business rolling. These 2 guys are also familiar faces from a prior GTA game, Jethro and Dwayne. They used to work on marine engines in Vice City until the mob bought their place out. So they move to San Andreas to start new endeavors. After picking up the two mechanics, Truth also gets CJ to pick up a guy named Zero, an electronics expert that runs an RC shop in town. So with the garage staff essentially doubled, it's time to start getting some money into the shop. Kendall approaches CJ with the idea to buy properties in the area once they get some cash flow and turn flipping businesses into a way to get back on top. Perfect timing as well, as Zero calls CJ the next day and says that the landlord of his building is selling and he might lose his shop. So CJ decides to head over there and buy it. And it's not really his thing, as it's mostly RC toys and action figures, featuring Rockstar characters from other games like Vice City and Manhunt. And this also opens CJ up into doing some jobs for Zero, mainly helping him with his rivalry with another RC tech guy named Berkeley that is competing for his business. He defends his rooftop from RC planes dropping bombs on his satellite dishes. He takes out Berkeley's delivery drivers with an RC plane himself, and finally he helps Zero in a full-on RC war that results in the loser having to leave town. A big contrast to the typical gangster stuff that CJ does.
Ha ha! Ha! Berkeley, you, sir, are a loser. Leave the field of battle in shame, pack up your crummy mail-order business, and get out of my town!
It's not long before Officer Tenpenny gets in contact with CJ after his move. He calls him up and starts barking orders as usual. He wants that weed that he got from Truth to be planted in a district attorney's car. He's been on Crash's ass and Tenpenny needs him taken out of the picture. CJ disguises himself as a valet driver in order to get the DA's car. He takes it to the garage in order to plant the drugs in the trunk and then brings it back to the hotel where the DA is staying, and then he calls a crime tip hotline to report the drugs in the trunk, getting the DA arrested.
He's got half of Mexico in here. Must be 2 tons of Mary here.
What? But I've never seen. How could it be?
Hell of a defense you got there, buddy.
Later on, Tenpenny and Pulaski come around the garage in person and have another job for CJ, to take out a journalist and a reporter that have been posting things not to their liking, so obviously they just gotta die. The next day at the garage, Kendall tells CJ that the construction workers behind the garage have been harassing her and calling her a hooker, so he heads up there to not only destroy the site, but also bury the foreman in his own porta potty under freshly poured concrete. Meanwhile, Caesar's been keeping pretty busy with the happenings of Los Santos by not only calling CJ whenever he gets word of a drug smuggler running crack for Big Smoke that CJ can hunt down and kill, but also he gets information on the suppliers of the drugs to Big Smoke and the Ballas. They track down the members of this drug supply organization at a meetup. CJ scopes out and takes pictures of Ryder and a few other guys having a meeting at the Clucking Bell. One of the guys' name is T-Bone Mendez. Caesar recognizes him, but the other two are some white guy in a suit and a guy who is obviously a pimp, but they don't know their names yet. Not long after, Woozy shows up in CJ's garage to say what's up, and CJ asks if he recognizes any of these men in the picture. They don't know the white guy, but they do know that he is in charge. But they do know T-Bone Mendez as the muscle, and they also know the pimp, named Jizzy B, who helps set up the deals between multiple parties. So CJ decides to get into this drug syndicate by going through Jizzy. He heads down to the club that he owns and he decides to introduce himself to Jizzy and offer to work for him.
I heard you was the man with the hookup, and you was the man I needed to see.
So Jizzy puts CJ to work. He has him take out some rival pimps in the city and also take down a client that's been beating up his girls. And the next day at the club, CJ helps both Jizzy and T-Bone take down a couple of thieves who ambushed one of their drug vans and stole their product. CJ also gets roped into helping out the last man in the syndicate that wasn't named. It's a guy named Mike Torino. He calls T-Bone and tells him that he's been kidnapped by the same crew that stole the drugs the prior day, and CJ has to head to the airport and take them out and save Mike before they are able to escape. Mike is naturally a suspicious guy, so as CJ is driving them back to Jizzy's club, he has T-Bone search CJ's wallet to find out that his name is Carl Johnson and that he is from Los Santos. And they don't really say anything else, but obviously this is an issue if Mike brings that name up to Ryder or Big Smoke. The next day, Jizzy calls CJ and asks him to help T-Bone and Torino and meet them in a car down by a gas station. Once CJ gets there, he's ambushed by T-Bone in the back seat, who accuses CJ of working for someone else. But he convinces T-Bone that he's simply just working for some money, and they get onto the job at hand, which is escort the drug van through some roadblocks of more people trying to steal from them. And this is where the drug syndicate missions kind of chill out for a bit, and CJ starts to do some work for his new friend, Woozie. CJ goes to Woozie and learns from one of his henchmen that he is in fact blind, something Carl wasn't able to figure out before. I mean, Woozie was racing cars a few weeks ago. Woozie also reintroduces himself to CJ as the boss of the Mountain Cloud Boys, a triad gang, as CJ is testing to see if he is actually blind. Woozie has a few jobs for CJ around San Fierro. He rides with Woozie to a meetup and protects him from an ambush of a rival triad gang. He helps a leader of another allied triad gang named Ran Fa Li by stealing packages and distracting the common enemy that he has with Woozie, the Da Nang boys. CJ also bugs the ship of the Da Nang, and as a result finds out the leader of this gang is called the Snakehead, and he is arriving to San Fierro on a freighter ship, with refugees held captive on board as well. So Woozie has CJ infiltrate this cargo ship and kill the leader of the Da Nang and also free the slaves on the ship, cementing a very solid relationship with Woozie, a strong ally to have in San Andreas. And this relationship pays off very quickly, as Woozie informs CJ of a meeting between the drug syndicates and the Ballas that CJ can ambush and take out all of them. And Woozie also has his men go in to help them out as well. But in order to find the location, he has to get Jizzy B's phone. So the best way to do that is to obviously go to the club and kill him for it. CJ does make it a point to sneak into the club and not just shoot the place up, but once inside, that's what it boils down to anyway, as he takes too long to just kill Jizzy.
What y'all waiting on, huh? Somebody cap this nigga, man.
But he chases him down through San Fierro and gets the phone either way. He finds out the meetup is going to be at Pier 69, so he and Caesar meet up there along with some of Woozie's triads in order to kill all the Ballas and the Loco Syndicate that is there, including T-Bone and the Grove Street family member, Ryder. Torino was also supposed to be there, but he comes in by helicopter and sees some dead bodies on the roof, so they retreat before landing. So CJ and Caesar move in and shoot their way through the men there, killing T-Bone together with automatic fire and sending him off the pier into the water. Ryder tries to escape by jumping into the water and stealing a boat, but CJ runs him down and blows the boat up. Kind of an unceremonious kill for someone that CJ has known for years. He gets no special cutscene or anything. I mean, T-Bone had a more monumental death than Ryder did. The next day, Woozie calls CJ with information on Torino loading up a helicopter with supplies and making a break for it. So CJ heads down to the helipad downtown and chases the chopper down until blowing it up, surely killing the last man of the drug syndicates inside. And the next mission makes sure that they are done for good, as CJ goes to their warehouse where they're making the crack and blows the whole thing up, drugs and all, cutting off Big Smoke's suppliers, leaving him open for the taking once he gets back to Los Santos. And after doing all of this, CJ gets a call from an unknown person using a voice disguiser telling him to meet him at a ranch in Bone County. He says he has information on his brother's suite and it is very important. But before CJ heads out of San Fierro, he decides to help Caesar, Kendall, and the rest of the shop get business flowing smoothly to keep a steady cash flow and to set up Kendall and Caesar for the future as business owners. They buy a car showroom across the street from the garage and run it like Sunshine Autos in Vice City. Steal cars on their clients' wish list to flip them and sell them. So CJ does various jobs, stealing cars from rival dealerships, random civilians using spike strips, and even from the shipping docks as cars are coming into port. Eventually, the garage and the showroom are successful businesses, and CJ moves on to the next chapter. So after he sets up San Fierro for good, CJ goes to meet up with this stranger on the phone to see what he knows about his brother. So CJ pulls up to this farmhouse outside of San Fierro and the same disguised voice greets him in the garage. Before giving him any information on his brother or why he called him there in the first place, the stranger first has CJ complete a challenge to see what he's made of.
What it look like I'm made of? Pudding?
It's a simple checkpoint race, only it's in a big ass monster truck for whatever reason. Style points, I guess. And once CJ returns, he is able to meet the one and only Mike Torino, back from the dead. CJ thinks that Torino is there to kill him, but instead he needs his help. Torino explains that he was in a drug smuggling syndicate in order for the government agency he works for to get a deeper connection into Latin America and to fund their operations there. Torino tells CJ that he needs a guy like him to do stuff that he can't get caught doing. For starters, he has CJ hijack a tanker truck full of fuel along with the help of his friend Caesar. The next day though, CJ confronts Torino about this information that he may have on his brother, Sweet. Torino says he knows exactly where Sweet is, which prison he's in, which block of the prison, and even the precise cell number. And he knows the people that are in the cells next to Sweet as well. He has full tabs on him.
Sweet's just fine. He gets touched. A prison guard goes home and finds that his wife and kid have been murdered. Everything's under control.
Torino also tells CJ about Tenpenny and Pulaski being corrupt officers, and that he knows about Officer Pendlebury that they killed off and attempted to frame CJ with from the beginning of the game. Torino assures CJ that he knows just about everything, and also that as long as CJ helps him out, Sweet is as safe as can be. So for now, CJ does some more work for Torino. The next job, he has CJ head out to the desert and protect a helicopter delivery of some nondescript contraband, shooting down other helicopters coming in and trying to take out the delivery, and then retrieving the package and delivering it safe to a hideout. Next, he has CJ buy an old airstrip out in the desert and has him take some flying lessons out there to get CJ acquainted with all sorts of flying machines. A not too subtle hint as to what the next missions will entail for Torino. Once CJ's all certified to fly, Torino has him fly some equipment out to his agents that are in trouble somewhere in the forest, so CJ has to not only fly across the map with these supplies, but also he has to stay below radar level, flying very close to the ground, which gets annoying when going into forested areas. The next day, a rival agency to whatever agency Torino is with arrives to the airstrip and starts loading up a cargo plane with stolen landmines that they plan to drop off in some Middle Eastern country to arm a war that's going on there. And Torino wants the plan stopped, as in he wants CJ to hop on this plane as it's taking off, kill all the agents on board, and then blow the plane up and skydive down to safety like some sort of secret agent. CJ has come a long way since Grove Street. From here though, Torino lays low for a while, or at least he doesn't reach out to CJ for any more work, but at least CJ knows that he's looking after Sweet and he's safe for now. While he's out here doing work in the desert though, he gets some calls from some other old friends. Both Woozy and Truth reach out to him. Woozy calls up CJ about an exciting new business venture in Las Venturas and wants CJ to meet him at the Four Dragons Casino when he can. As far as Truth though, Truth is getting into some shit. He's been seeing government agents roaming around and CJ talking to Torino, and he's been keeping clear. But now that Torino is gone, he wants to have CJ help him out with some of his endeavors. And some serious endeavors they are. For starters, he has CJ break into Area 69 and steal the secret black project that they are working on. So CJ runs into this GTA version of Area 51, gunning down tons of soldiers as he gets into the depths of this facility, and then he steals the secret project, which turns out to be a freaking jetpack.
Oh, shit. Hey, man, look out! Oh. The new age begins here.
The next day, Truth has another chill job for CJ. He wants him to use the jetpack he just stole and ambush a train leaving the secret facility and steal something from them. He doesn't quite know what it is, but whatever it is the answer. The truth, you might even say. Turns out it's a jar of green goo, and the Truth likes what he sees.
Ooh, everything is different now.
As he grabs the jar and dips off in his van saying he'll be in touch. It's obvious that this green goo is related to aliens of some sort, with Area 51 being involved and secret projects and all that. And after this mission, Truth calls into one of the talk radio stations that talks about conspiracies and says that aliens are real and that he's held them in his hand, all but confirming their existence in the Grand Theft Auto universe.
There are aliens living in the state. Aliens, and I've held them in my own hand. Everybody, go to the desert. Beg their forgiveness.
How do you know all this?
I went to the camp. Believe what you want to believe, but ask yourself, why should I make this up?
The only thing I want to ask myself is how I can keep you off future shows. Oh, God.
So, with all that craziness done, it's time for CJ to head out to Las Venturas and see what Woozy has going on. CJ goes to meet with Woozie at the Four Dragons Casino and sees what he has cooking. Turns out, Woozie has bought the casino and he plans to have his grand opening soon. But the Italian Mafia is causing him some trouble with this, as they own rival casinos on the Strip, but he doesn't know exactly which family it is, as there are 3 of them that have stakes in Las Venturas, primarily with the casino the Caligula. He offers CJ a share in his casino if he's able to help out with these Italian pests giving him some trouble. Some guys came into the casino and busted up a shipment of slot machines, and Woozie's men were able to capture one of them. So CJ has the idea to tie this guy to the hood of a car and drive around Las Venturas until he tells him who he works for. Eventually, this guy squeals, and he tells CJ that he worked for the Sindaco family. So now Woozie can come up with a plan to strike back at them. Woozie tells CJ of a quarry just outside of town for him to go steal some dynamite from, because chances are they're gonna need some explosives. And just the next day, it's discovered that some counterfeit poker chips are making their way into Woozie's casino, with the fake chips having a dragon on them with shades and a walking stick, mocking Woozie's blindness.
Oh yeah, the dragon on this got the sunglasses and a white stick.
Insolent bastards!
The Sindacos own the plastic factory in town, so they're obviously responsible for these fake chips. So CJ happily heads over to the factory and destroys all the machines there, killing a bunch of mafia muscle as well. Hitting back at the Sindacos every move is one thing, but Woozie also plans to make a big move on the rival mob-owned casino called the Caligula. He starts planning a heist, Ocean's 11 style, with CJ. They stage out a storage room for the planning and they get to work. And CJ does a lot of work to get this done. He goes to the city planning department, takes photos of the blueprints to Caligula's casino. He follows a croupier home and disguises himself as a gimp for her kinky date night, and dates her for a while until gaining her trust for security codes to the casino. He plants C4 explosives at the Sherman Dam in order to blow it up and cut power to the casino when it's time for the heist. He runs around the city and steals 4 police motorcycles to use in the escape, and he also steals a helicopter with a giant magnet on it and uses that to steal an armored truck to use as a getaway vehicle for the money. It's a lot of busy work to set this whole heist up, but the cutscenes for the start of each mission are pretty funny, with more and more people progressively finding their way into this secret storage room that just started as CJ and Woozie making the plan.
Hey, what are you still doing here?
I live here.
Oh, okay, you can stay.
While you're doing all this work for Woozie, CJ gets a call from a good friend, Truth. Turns out, after stealing a jetpack and some green goo, Truth decided to go on a peyote trip with a band from the UK. And somehow, Truth ended up in Los Santos, and the band is lost somewhere in the desert, and he needs CJ to go pick them up, since they are Brits and he doesn't think they'll last long in the desert. CJ finds the 2 men tripping out in the desert, one of them being a familiar face to GTA fans, Kent Paul from Vice City, and the other guy is named Macker, who has an obsession with beating his meat. CJ drives them back to their friend Rosie that has a suite in the Caligula casino, and once they arrive, that friend Rosie is another friendly face from Vice City. Ken Rosenberg, once a fine lawyer to Tommy Vercetti, he's now washed up and disbarred, and he's forced to run the Caligula casino under the rule of the 3 families that control it: the Sindacos, the Leones, and the Forellis. Another snippet from the introduction movie shows Ken trying to call Tommy Vercetti on a payphone after he gets out of rehab, but Tommy doesn't take his call.
Oh really? You told him I called? Look, I made that ingrate, and now he won't take my calls? Just put him on the phone right now! Hello? Hello?
So for now, Ken may be clean from coke, but he is still under the thumb of the mafia, and his good friend Tommy isn't going to bail him out. So as CJ is working with Woozie, he also starts working with the people at the Caligula to work different angles on taking them down. And since they don't know CJ personally, they think he's just some hired muscle as always. First job CJ does for Ken is actually solving a problem that CJ caused himself. Turns out, Johnny Sindaco is in a shock-induced coma at the hospital. You may remember him as the guy that CJ strapped to a windshield and sped around Las Venturas with. The Forelli family sees this as an opportunity to take out Johnny for good and cause a war between the 3 families for control. And of course, Rosenberg will get taken out for this as he's the one in charge of this casino operation. So, in order to save Ken, CJ has to take down the Forelli goons that stole the ambulance transporting Johnny and kill them and bring Johnny back to the Sindaco's meat factory safe and sound. After this success, Rosenberg is back to using coke and becoming his normal erratic self that we all knew and loved in Vice City. And in his confidence-boosting coke binge, he has CJ bring him out to the Sindaco's meat factory in order for him to show some face at Johnny's return and try to win some favor of the Sindacos with kind words and a respectful visit. The visit starts off well enough. Ken and Johnny having some small talk, but then Johnny turns to CJ to see who this man is with Ken and immediately recognizes him as the man who terrorized him, and in his weakened state, he has a heart attack out of shock and he dies on the spot.
Damn, that nigga fucked up.
This turns the meat factory into a shootout. The Sindacos try to take out Ken and CJ as they gun their way out of there. At one point, Ken remarks how exciting this is, still high on coke, obviously, and he mistakenly calls CJ Tommy as well as they fight their way out.
This is so exciting, Tommy. It's like old times.
Who the fuck is Tommy?
After this stir-up, Ken obviously lays low for a little bit, but CJ still gets into some business. He is officially signed on as a partner with Woozie and Ranfa Lee for ownership of the Four Dragons Casino. And on his stroll through the strip, he runs into Mad Dog, the rapper, threatening to jump off of a roof because his career went down the drain after he got hooked on drugs and he lost all his money gambling that started after someone stole his rhyme book. Another problem that CJ caused. So CJ feels compelled to save him and bring him to a rehab center to get him cleaned up. CJ also runs into the wonderful crash units in Las Venturas as well. Tenpenny gets CJ to do some work for them, even all the way out here. He has CJ go and take out a DEA agent with an evidence file on Tenpenny that he is about to hand over to the FBI. And after he gets this file at the meetup with Crash, when CJ is supposed to hand it over to them, Tenpenny lashes out and beats Officer Hernandez with a shovel for snitching them out. And he has CJ dig a grave for Hernandez and himself, while Pulaski watches. While CJ is talking to Pulaski at one point, Hernandez starts waking up and tries to tackle Pulaski into the grave, but he instead gets shot and falls into the grave himself that was being dug for him anyway. But that was enough to spook Pulaski and have him run off, with CJ not too far behind, eventually catching up to him and killing the dirty officer in the street.
Any last requests?
Yeah. Can I fuck your sister?
You an asshole to the end. Punk motherfucker.
Two of the Crash officers are now dead, leaving just Tenpenny to fend for himself, but for now, he's on the run. After all this, CJ makes his way back to Ken at Caligula, but when he gets up to his room, he's met with a familiar face to fans. Salvatore Leone from GTA 3. He is also being served food by one of the casino's waitresses, who is Salvatore's future wife Maria, also from GTA 3. He's interrogating Ken due to all these events going on in the city, and CJ comes up to the room and introduces himself to Salvatore, and tells him that he used to do some work for his son Joey in Liberty City, as we saw in the introduction movie, and this wins over some favor from the Don.
You know my Joey? I like that.
Salvatore tells CJ that some Forelli goons are flying into the city to try to take him out, and he asks CJ to take care of them for him. Clearly, all of CJ and Ken's meddling has caused a rift between the three mob families. I mean, the Sindacos are entirely out of the picture, with Johnny being dead, so it's no surprise that the Forellis are going to go after the only remaining boss, being Leone, so they could have a full run at the casino. So CJ does some more Torino-inspired Mission Impossible shit. He flies a small plane up to the jet carrying the Forelli soldiers. He jumps from his plane and lands on their jet, opens their door and gets inside to shoot them all before hijacking the plane and then landing it safely at the airport. After this, Leone has another job for CJ, a hit in Liberty City on Marco Forelli at the St. Mark's Bistro. CJ asks to have Ken, Paul, and Macker for backup in this mission, but we all know he doesn't really need their help. He's just trying to save them from Salvatore, and once they're outside the casino, he tells them to skip town so they don't end up getting killed by the mob. CJ heads up to the airport, hops on a jet, and flies to Liberty City. You unfortunately don't get to explore the city when you get there, but you do get a quick glimpse at the ride to the bistro, showing that it's wintertime in the game as there's snow on the ground in Liberty City. Inside the bistro, CJ guns down all the Forelli men, including the boss man himself, Marco, and then he hops on a flight back to Las Venturas. From here, with Ken safely out of Caligula and everything being set for the big job, it's time for Woozie and company to get this Ocean's 11 heist underway. CJ goes into the casino dressed as a croupier and heads to the staff room, using the codes that he got from rizzing up his BDSM girlfriend. He throws some gas down a ventilation shaft that leads into the vault, killing all the guards down there. Meanwhile, Zero blows the C4 at the dam, killing the power to the casino. CJ lifts the gate to the service bay with a forklift since the power is down, and the team rolls in with the armored truck and starts to kill all the security on the way to the vault. Also, Woozie has one of the funniest moments in the game in this mission.
Okay, team. I've gone over the layout to this place so I know it back to front. Everybody follow me. Damn! The devious bastards have changed the layout!
Don't worry. I'll take the lead, boss.
Good idea. Everybody, follow him.
The team gets the money in the truck and then escapes using the police bikes as phony escorts, while CJ makes his way to the roof as a decoy, taking all the attention off of them. CJ jumps off the roof with a parachute, landing on another roof, and he steals a helicopter there to escape. Again, doing some Mission Impossible type shit. CJ's made it such a long way from Grove Street. Speaking of which, it's time to head back to Los Santos and start handling business back home. CJ has tons of cash from all these jobs he's been doing. He's got crazy connections in all sorts of sectors, and nothing in Los Santos is too much for him to handle now. He does get a call from Salvatore Leone after the heist, telling him that he's a dead man for robbing him, but clearly CJ isn't too concerned.
Well, it's been nice talking to you, but I got some money that needs spending on some expensive trash, so if you excuse me.
You're dead! Dead!
And realistically, we don't see any motion from the mob again in this game. Mad Dog also gets out of rehab and he wants to get back to Los Santos as well, but his mansion is taken over by the drug dealer Big Papa, as Mad Dog didn't have any money to pay him, so he signed over his house to him. So CJ along with some of Woozie's men get to the mansion and take out all the thugs there, getting a new foothold in Los Santos to start taking back the city. CJ also calls up Rosie and Paul and has them move into the mansion as well, serving as an accountant and producer for Mad Dog to get his empire back. So now it's time to get back to the original plan since he got dumped into the countryside so long ago. Free Sweet from prison and take down Big Smoke and Officer Tenpenny. Once back in Los Santos, CJ is joining in on Ken's Paul and Mad Dog having a recording session when Torino hacks into the speakers there and tells CJ that he needs him to do one more job for him. And all this Mission Impossible shit has led up to this one big mission. CJ has to sneak into the back of a Navy aircraft carrier, Sam Fisher a bunch of soldiers there, disable the surface-to-air missile systems, and steal a freaking fighter jet. He then uses that fighter jet to destroy a whole fleet of spy ships and a few other fighter jets that are trying to gun him down. But once he's done with this, Torino is done with him, and the next time he shows up at Mad Dog's mansion, it's just to give CJ the last job of going to pick up his brother Sweet from prison. Torino used his influence to get Sweet released, and he does so as a show that he is true to his word to CJ, and also to show that he no longer has any work that he needs CJ to do for him.
So what was that little job you was talking about, Torino?
I just want you to go pick up your brother. Get out of here.
And this is the last time we see Mike Torino. Once CJ picks up Sweet, he starts getting excited, telling his big brother what he's been getting into, telling him that they got a mansion now, telling them that they're in the rap game, that they own a stake in a casino, that they got some business in San Fierro. CJ's been real busy, making it big out there, and he's stoked to have his brother get in on his empire. Sweet, however, is less than pleased.
Nigga, what the fuck is this bullshit?
What you mean, man? What's mine is yours, and you know that.
You never did get it, did you, Carl? I need to go check on things in the hood. Man, that's the problem. You always a perpetrator, running from what's real.
Hey, man, shit's fucked up there. You don't want to be in the hood.
No, that's exactly where I want to be. What you done for our hood?
Man, what the hood done for me? Always dragging me down. Ever since I got out the hood, shit been cracking. That's everybody's dream to get out the hood.
Man, you sound just like Smoke right now.
CJ tries to tell Sweet that Grove Street isn't what it was when he got locked up. Things have been getting worse and worse since they've been gone. But they ride to Grove Street together anyway to check it out. And once they get there, they get approached by some crackhead trying to sell them a blender. A blender that was clearly stolen from their mother's house. CJ wants to simply leave and go home. his home being the mansion in Vinewood. But Sweet says Grove Street is their home, and he has CJ clear out the crackheads from their mom's house and kill anyone selling drugs on Grove Street. Also, for the first time ever, Grove Street is controlled by the Ballas, so CJ has to start a gang war with them to get the territory back to Grove Street. And he can't even recruit anybody for help for this, as all the Grove Street members on the block are high on crack. But once the dust has settled, Sweet goes into his house and refuses to move out of the hood, while CJ drives back to his mansion home. The next day he walks in on Sweet almost taking a hit from a crack pipe himself. He's lost everything and he just wants to see what could be so good about this stuff that had everyone hooked to it. CJ starts going off on Sweet and the crack whore that was trying to get him to smoke it, and she gets angry and says that they'll have to answer to Beat Up for the disrespect, the crack kingpin in the neighborhood that we saw earlier in the game. I'm sure for him, business has been booming with CJ and Sweet gone. He's moved out of his old projects and into Glen Park, Ballas turf. So Sweet and CJ head over there and take over the territory from the Ballas, just the two of them. And once they have the turf, they raid Beat Up's house there and threaten to kill him. Beat Up tells him that he had no choice but to move to Glen Park. Big Smoke made him do it, and Big Smoke is the one running the whole drug business in the city. But he keeps his location under wraps, and only Big Smoke's top lieutenants know where he is. After this confrontation, Beat Up tries to get his crack slave Big Bear to kill Sweet and CJ, but Bear finally lashes out and beats down Beat Up, deciding to get back with Grove Street for good and get clean from the drugs. Sweet steals Beat Up's nice car and takes Bear off to rehab, and CJ heads back to his mansion. At the mansion, he starts talking to Mad Dog, who is stressing. He's trying to get some good music made to get back on top of the game, and he turns on the TV to see a music video shoot with OG Loke, who's performing some familiar sounding rhymes. And it's here where Mad Dog puts two and two together and realizes that OG Loke is the one who stole his rhyme book and started his career spiraling downhill.
That's my money! And those are my hoes! And that's my video he's shooting today!
CJ looks pretty ashamed in the background because in reality, he's the one who stole the book. But instead of fessing up to this, he tells Mad Dog that they should go down there where they're filming this video and make a cameo appearance. So they speed down to the river where Loke is filming and crash the shoot. OG Loke starts running as soon as he sees them, hopping in an airboat thing trying to escape. So CJ has to hop in one as well and chase him down. And it's a pretty long chase, going around the beach and into the pier area, and even having a vehicle change at some point, going into some go-karts and continuing the chase on the streets of downtown Los Santos. Eventually getting back to OG Loke's studio and confronting him, stealing not only the rhyme book back, but also stealing OG Loke's record label from him, getting Mad Dog a ticket to making hits again. Back in Grove Street, things are also starting to look a little more up. Sweet has some family leaders in a meeting, planning to hit the Ballas and start taking back the hood. CJ comes in and says, can't this gangster shit wait a little bit? You know, I've got commitments and businesses to run now. And Sweet understandably gets upset. After all, the game started for this reason. The reason CJ even stayed on the West Coast was to help out Grove Street, but maybe it's clear that his heart was never in it. He was simply looking for an opportunity to make some money, and now that he's got a lot of opportunities and plenty of money, he's got no reason to run around the hood shooting some guns. But Sweet, he truly is Grove Street for life. He doesn't care about businesses or money, and he truly wants his neighborhood to thrive. So CJ, still trying to prove that he's down for Grove Street, helps Sweet out in taking out a few more neighborhoods from the Ballas, getting more turf under Grove Street control. Meanwhile, during all this stuff CJ's been doing, Officer Tenpenny has found himself arrested for corruption, racketeering, and several other charges. And CJ and his crew all watch the news over his court appearance at Mad Dog's mansion. As the broadcaster is listing off all the wrongdoings of Tenpenny and his unit, the group are all betting on how many years Tenpenny will get in jail for his crimes.
I say 20 years.
Try 5 years. Cops always get off easy.
Yeah, I heard that.
But once Tenpenny and his lawyer exit the courtroom, she announces that Tenpenny has been found innocent due to lack of evidence and he will walk completely free. This news causes chaos in the city. Almost immediately after this verdict, you hear gunshots and yelling outside as the city goes up in flames, rioting over this decision. Sweet decides that they need to bring order to the hood, so Sweet goes back to Grove Street and gets the place calmed down. And CJ helps Caesar out with his hood, taking control from the Vagos there and reclaiming the territory, gunning his way through the streets with Caesar's crew, as well as some other Grove Street members helping them out. It's one of the coolest missions in the game when it comes to gang warfare, and it's one of the only ones that show the feud between Caesar's gang, the Aztecas, and the Vagos. After helping Caesar out and getting more Ballas turf taken out, Sweet calls CJ with information on Smoke's location. They flipped enough territory to sniff him out, and it's time to confront the man in charge once and for all. So Sweet and CJ ride out to Smoke's crack fortress, and before going inside, CJ tells Sweet that he needs to do this alone, to prove to him without a shadow of a doubt that he is down for Grove Street. And because Smoke and Tenpenny both screwed him over multiple times in the game, it's time that he needs to take his own revenge. So CJ steals a SWAT tank and rams it into the building, gunning his way through all the floors of the building, seeing all the crazy shit there like a drug lab and giant statues of Big Smoke, before making it up to the penthouse and getting to the man himself. Smoke is pretty nonchalant about the reunion with CJ, just playing some video games on the couch as CJ points a gun at his head.
Hey, CJ, I was wondering when you would show up.
Eventually, he gets up and explains that he is the boss, and no one can touch him, even CJ, and they start their gunfight. Smoke's got some big body armor for his big body, and it takes a lot of bullets to put him down. And he cuts off the lights to make it harder for CJ to see him. But CJ has some thermal goggles still that he used from all his Mission Impossible shit, so it's really not that bad. And after some time, CJ eventually gets him down. And as he lays there dying, CJ asks Smoke why he did it. And it's the same old story of wanting the money and the power and the legacy. People are going to remember his name now, even if it meant turning his back on the family. And he dies holding a stack of money because in the end, that's all that ever mattered to him.
Oh, when I'm gone, everyone gonna remember my name. Big Smoke.
And after this, Tenpenny creeps his way into the penthouse and thanks CJ for killing not only Pulaski for him, but also Big Smoke, taking care of all his loose ends. And he gets CJ to load up Smoke's money into a bag for him, and he tries to take care of the last loose end, being CJ, trying to shoot him with a shotgun, but CJ is able to distract him and send him running. Tenpenny clearly still doesn't like CJ at all.
Carl, you motherfucking piece of shit gang-banging cocksucker!
He sets the crack fortress on fire and then makes a run for it, having CJ fight his way through this burning building to make it out to him. Tenpenny makes his escape in a fire truck so he won't get targeted by the angry mob in the city who are looking to rage out against police in the riot, so he can be a little more incognito in the fire truck as he makes his escape. Sweet, still sitting outside, sees Tenpenny hop in the fire truck and he runs after it and hops on the ladder on the back as he speeds off. So CJ now has to chase down the truck not only to kill Tenpenny, but also save his brother, who's hanging off of the truck. He chases this fire truck all around the city, eventually getting Sweet to jump into the convertible that he's been driving. CJ and Sweet switch seats, and CJ starts lighting the truck up, until Tenpenny eventually loses control and drives the fire truck off a bridge, landing in Grove Street of all places. Climbing out of the truck, still saying he can take them all down himself, yelling out that he runs the city, which turns into yelling for help, screaming "Officer down," but as he tumbles to the pavement, his wounds from the wreck are enough to end him once and for all. It's very reminiscent of Denzel's final scene in Training Day. CJ stands over him and wants to shoot him, to make sure that it is actually over, but Sweet wisely says it's not necessary, and he lets Tenpenny die from his traffic accident, not involving them in any way. Caesar, Kendall, and Truth all show up to watch Tenpenny die as well, congratulating CJ on finally beating the system, before CJ gives his final goodbye to Tenpenny, the same way that Tenpenny said goodbye to him several times in the game.
See you around, officer.
Back inside, CJ, Sweet, Caesar, and Kendall all talk about how work is never done. There are problems in San Fierro and Las Venturas with their many businesses, and Sweet still has some issues in the Grove as well. But all these things pale in comparison to what's been going on with Big Smoke and Tenpenny. Then a group of people come into the house and they all raise their guns at first, before seeing that it's Ken Rosenberg, Mad Dog, Kent Paul, and Macker, coming in to announce Mad Dog's first gold record since he started back up making music, causing everyone to celebrate. Everyone starts talking about what to do next, and CJ just walks outside, saying he's gonna hit the block and see what's happening. Rolling credits on the game. And after the credits roll, CJ gets a phone call from Catalina, who is seemingly having some sex with Claude, and she asks CJ if he's jealous. And CJ tells her she just needs to get some help. Clearly, Catalina is still crazy about CJ, or maybe just crazy. Probably that one. But with that, that's the end of the story to this game. Of course, you can still run around the city and do some hood rat shit as CJ, but that's where the plot ends, with all the loose ends being tied up. It's no surprise that San Andreas was released to universal acclaim. The game was through and through a masterpiece. It was the 5th highest rated PS2 game on Metacritic, being deemed the single most complete, unique universe in console history. I don't think there's a review out there at the time of release that had this game scored less than 9 out of 10. Everyone loved this game, and for good reason. San Andreas is one of those mythical titles that comes out and just changes the market and establishes itself as an instant classic. There are several things in San Andreas that continue to be standouts in gaming still today, over 20 years after its release. The voice acting, the defined universe, the strong tones and themes of the game, they all stand the test of time, cementing itself as a reference point for every Grand Theft Auto title released since, and even non-Grand Theft Auto titles that have any sort of urban open world setting. They all get compared to San Andreas. The game has become a litmus test. It's nothing short of a masterpiece. Like any other Rockstar game though, there was no shortage of controversy to the game. A lot of people criticize the game's racial stereotypes and the series' fetishization of race as a whole, jumping from an Italian American in Vice City to an African American in San Andreas, and having each character being an archetype of those races. Some people also criticize the reference to real-life racial events and accuse the game of making a mockery of them, like the Rodney King assault and the resulting riots in Los Angeles. There was also the typical outrage over the game's violence and activities that children could do, disregarding the whole rating system, saying that the game was for those 17 years of age, at least in the USA. Because some people just think that if it's a video game, it's meant for children, which obviously is not the case. One unique controversy did happen with San Andreas though, and that is the notorious hot coffee scenes in the game. In the initial concepts of this game, Dan Houser wanted there to be even more role-playing elements in this title, and having that go into the girlfriend relationships in the game. And as a result, there was a concept for CJ to go inside after a successful date and have the player do a minigame that was essentially controlling CJ having sex with his girlfriend. And this happened after the girl invited him in for some coffee, hence the name. However, the minigame was taken out of the game before release, having the dates ending in CJ being invited into the girl's house for coffee, but then just hearing some muffled sex noises after, with no visuals of the act. But the code wasn't fully removed from the game, they just made it inaccessible to players. So as time went on, the modding community found the code and released the mod to make the minigame playable. When the news of this content was released, Rockstar got into some massive shit with the ESRB and even the FTC under the petition of US Senator Hillary Clinton for not disclosing this adults only rated stuff to them on the game's release when the game was released under an M rating. Which is a big deal, as it is essentially selling pornographic material to people under the age of 18. Because this stuff was in the actual game, this was made by Rockstar. They just thought that they can get around it by having it being inaccessible, but once modders took that access limit off, the stuff was just in the game. The company was subject to a class action lawsuit, and several fines were brought down on both Rockstar and Take-Two for this. And a few countries like Australia, not surprisingly, banned the game entirely until this content was fully removed. This incident had a lasting impact on the whole gaming industry. The ESRB announced fines of $1 million if developers failed to disclose the extent of the graphic content in their games. And since then, Rockstar has had a harsh relationship with modders for their games, striking them down for all their games since this incident and sometimes threatening legal action on modders. And the ESRB also cracked down on the ratings of other games who may have had some more gore or sexual content than initially thought on release, such as Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, that was re-rated from T to M after they discovered more detailed depictions of blood and gore than what was originally thought to be in the game, as well as mods for the game being able to have female characters become topless. Rockstar has since, of course, made jokes over this controversy, even though it was a massive deal for them at the time. In GTA 4, there's an achievement called Warm Coffee that is unlocked if you get to have Nico invited in after a date with a girl. And the Statue of Liberty in that game has the face of Hillary Clinton, and it's called the Statue of Happiness, probably related to Hillary Clinton's involvement with the hot coffee controversy. The remastered trilogy games that came out in 2021 also had the code for hot coffee still in them on release, and resulted in the games being taken off the shelves for several days as they were patched and then re-released digitally. Not surprisingly, seeing how sloppily those games were handled in the first place. That said though, the legacy of San Andreas is just full of ports and remasters, being ported to several consoles and even mobile phones, even once being announced as a port for the MetaQuest VR system, but that version of the game has been put on an indefinite hold. Even with all these ports and remasters, there was no stories version of San Andreas though. We got Liberty City and Vice City story games released for the PSP and eventually on home consoles that dove more into these cities with different characters offering a different perspective. But for whatever reason, we never got that with San Andreas. There are some theories that they didn't do it because the PSP discs couldn't utilize a map the size of San Andreas. But I think the real reason is more so that Rockstar lost the rights to use the renderware engine after EA bought Criterion, and as a result, the rights to the renderware engine in 2004. And this would make sense, as Rockstar went on to have future titles made using the Rage software developed by Rockstar San Diego, formerly Angel Studios. But we never really get an official answer for why we never got a San Andreas stories. I think it would have been really cool though. You could have us play as Sweet during CJ's absence in Liberty City, giving some background on what happened to Grove Street and what happened to their brother Brian, and other guys in the hood like Big Bear, who apparently was a strong soldier back in the day before he got addicted to crack, and ending that version of the game with the Green Saber incident leading up to San Andreas. Or you could have us go completely out of Grove Street and control Caesar and explore his rise to power against the Vagos, and show him meeting Kendall and getting affiliated with Grove Street over time. There's tons of cool concepts and ideas that you can go with there, but unfortunately we never got something like that. With that being said though, that's where I'm going to wrap up this massive video. This project took months to make. Playing the game to completion, doing all the side objectives, gathering all the footage that I needed, and then doing tons of research surrounding everything with this game, from its development to its release and reception and controversy. This was a project way larger than I anticipated, and I'm truly sorry for the delay. I do hope that you enjoyed it though. I do plan on to move into both Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories next to wrap up this Grand Theft Auto 3D universe, and then move on to GTA 4 and 5, and who knows, maybe I can get all of that done before GTA 6 is released. Here's to hoping. But before I go, I would like to shout out my patrons and YouTube members for holding it down as always. Doc Schwinn, Kid Kingpin, Not Much, Zachary Parkerson, Anonymous Starkweather, Ben Stevens, Yay Man, Alfred Correa, 10 Inches Soft, Kenneth Butler, Potty, Ethan Carpenter, Matthew Taylor, Nick the Brosa, Nico Mendez, Frankie Hammer, Peanutso Holland, Grizzly Wisley, Sexy Pickles, Shotgun Minister, AC, Doguk Kekson, Forjum Nas, and Pablo Roki. As always, thank you for watching. I hope to see you next time. Peace.
One last thing. You do know that I'm black, right? And not Chinese.
I'm blind, Carl, not stupid.